What's up, everybody? Welcome to Rear Naked Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Kilstein.
And back at it with Drew Weatherhead, and we've got a awesome guest today. And I say that every time, but I'm saying it this time because
This one's a lot.
yeah, he's a big one. He's one of my all-time favorite fighters, like top 3 for sure. And
Yes.
B, Jamie has a crush on him, which
I'm like, I just, as you said that, caught myself in the video screen, and I was literally like, if you're not watching on YouTube, like wistfully like looking off like to like the top left corner, just kind of like where you would see the thought bubbles of like me and Carlos Condit. Carlos Condit's a guest, by the way, where you would see the thought bubble of like me and Carlos like at the fair eating cotton candy together, or like like walking down the boardwalk. By the way, we got such a fucking manly guest, and I am just fucking destroying that right now. I'm like, do you think he's thinking about me?
Dude, I think of myself as a pretty good looking guy.
For
and
sure.
I got my hair all ready for this one. I even used hairspray like a girl to make sure it was perfect.
Oh, I did.
Because again, it's just one of my favorite fighters ever.
And
right when this thing starts, he pops in and he's like doing his hair in the selfie camera. And I'm like, fuck, he wins.
I know.
Damn it.
I know.
That was quick.
And I've known Carlos for a really long time. I had no idea he was like one of your top 3 favorite fighters, because when we started the podcast, he was one of the first people. He like watches my Instagram stories and shit. And so he was one of the first people. I'm like, yo, we're starting this podcast. Like he was just in my break glass in case of emergency. Like whenever we needed, I got Carlos Condit. And we talk about, you know, I've known him for so long. He did my old podcast. We've just been internet buddies. And so when you told me, you were like, I can get Carlos Condit, because our friend Nate Harris, who's like the greatest fucking guy in the world, who runs 10th Planet Albuquerque, which I will be doing a seminar there this weekend.
This is true.
Dark Haven Studios. Will Carlos Condit be there? Will you hear me squeal like a girl? If he is, who knows? But you can find out for $30. And so I was pretty cocky. I was like, dude, I like have his phone number. I was like, I could have gotten Carlos whenever. The second he did the hair check, because the last time I interviewed him, it was just audio. And then this happened, and I was like, fuck. And then I got nervous.
Dude, I flashed back like to the Gary Tonin episode where I'm talking about how insecure I am about my beard hair being patchy, looking at his perfectly pristine facial hair that I don't think he even tries. I don't think he tries.
Now, there might be listeners that are like, what are you guys, fucking gay? I mean, kind of.
I didn't think I was before this.
And now there are a lot of questions. The podcast next week is totally different. It's just us coming to terms and you figuring out how to leave your family.
There's enough people that already think our logo looks gay, so now they're really wondering. It's really up in the air.
By the way, if you if you're like, how do we get Jamie to double down on something I don't like on the show, tell me that. Because when Drew was like, some people said our logo looks gay, I was like, I will change it to 2 dicks fucking. I will change it into 1 dick going inside of the dick hole of another dick, and it'll just say Rear Naked Radio, and then in parentheses, you're gay for looking at this. It'll just be all dicks, just towers of dicks. The Twin Towers reimagined as dicks.
Gay people will be like, that's a little much, buddy.
Yeah. And I'm just like, hey. Don't you fucking, I don't know. I'm sorry. I started, got too many dicks on the brain. We promised we would talk about, wait, can I talk about one other thing?
Sure.
I realized, like, with my attraction to men, stay with me. It's, because there was a phase where I was like so progressive and vegan that I'm like, all right, if I was going to be gay, like, it would make sense,
right?
It would check off the rest of the boxes if I was like,
nobody would be like, really?
Exactly. Yes. Fucking perfectly said. They'd be like, yeah.
Obviously.
But I realized with me, and I think this ties into why I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I think this ties into high school. I was such a fucking dork in high school. And I mean, even like really not until like my like late 20s that I start to like figure shit out. That it's not like a physical attraction with guy. It's like, oh, I want to be as cool as that guy kind of attraction, if that makes, you know what I mean? So like, there's this show. I was actually texting with Nate about this. There's this show, this little known TV show. It's called Banshee.
Never heard of it.
And no, nobody has. It was on like Cinemax. And essentially it is this cool, good-looking criminal guy who ends up being in a bar fight where the sheriff gets killed, and he goes, I'm going to be the sheriff. And he's there to like find his lost love, who's like remarried and stuff. And it's literally just this guy going around fucking and beating people to death with his hands.
It sounds like exactly something Nate would be involved with.
No, I thought so. And he was like, I've never heard of it. And I was like, it's literally just me who watches the show. So I haven't been even watching TV. I've just been reading and trying to train and do the podcasts. And suddenly I'm like, watched a full season of Banshee. And I had this realization that I did the exact same thing after my last breakup. And I'm like, is this what I want to be? Where every time I break up, I just watch this fucking dude get into bar fights and just like become this vigilante, and he just like fucks girls in car. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is
you got a warrant out for your arrest now.
Yeah, I am on the run. I'm desperately going to try to start a bar fight when I hang out with Carlos this weekend in Albuquerque.
That would be awesome. You standing beside each other, having chit chat, and then you just smack some rando in the back of the head and then pull Carlos in front of you. Do it.
He gets fucking just like a shard of glass back in his injured retina. I'm like,
oh no.
All right. So we promised you were going to talk some gi drama. We promised some nerdy jiu-jitsu talk.
That's right.
Do you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Interview, or you want to talk fucking jiu-jitsu politics?
Let's talk the politics first. Get it out of the way, because I don't know. It's just silly, really. Like, there's this thing that has been going around in jiu-jitsu for a while, but has started to become kind of like this. I don't know, it's a topic of some heat right now. Ever since Keenan Cornelius started up his new school, this American Jiu-Jitsu, that's its own little debate, the AJJ.
Yep.
But he made very public statements that, you know, he's going to be much more laxed on his gi policy. So for people who don't train in a big gym or a very well-known affiliation, which is actually a lot of people out there, they don't even know what the words gi policy means.
Right.
Essentially, it dictates what you can and can't wear as far as a uniform. And some of them are really, really strict.
Are they?
Oh, dude. There's certain ones where it has to be white. You can't have any other patches. It has to, like, in some cases, I understand it to a degree, like say AOJ, for example, they don't allow any colored gis at all on their mats because they're white mats.
Right.
So
when I trained with, I did a private with Hoffa like way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
They were cool enough where they have a ton of stuff that they lent. They even lent like spats. I think it was like the only time I ever wore spats. But yeah, they at least like lent it out. They weren't just like $800.
Right. But I went and trained at AOJ too, and thankfully I had a white show-you roll with me. So I kind of looked like I could have probably just slipped in like, hey guys, I'm back. And they'd be like, well, he looks like us. But they, the desk guy made sure that I had a white gi and that had no other affiliation patches on it.
Dude, walking in, not to derail this, but walking into a gym where I feel like I'm automatically in trouble by the front desk I fucking hate it. I'm like, I'm already nervous enough. I'm paying a mat fee to fucking fight all your friends. Like, it's already like an uncomfortable situation. Can you please just not make me feel more awkward?
Yeah, man. Like, I get guys coming in to cross-train from other gyms here all the time. And so often, one of them will ask me, is it okay if I wear my gi with my other patches here? I'm like, why the fuck would I care?
rip them off.
Like,
Rip
yeah,
those fucking
exactly.
patches
No,
off.
I need you to make sure that you cancel your membership at your home gym. You sign up for 12 months here, prepaid, right? All up front. You're going to wear,
You're babysitting my kids tonight.
you're my gi. It's, I don't know, man. Like,
Well, okay. So, I mean, this seems like a ripe for Jamie Rage topic, and it is. I will say, I trained at my friend at Kenny Florian's gym, and he's kind of gone like an AOJ model. And I think it was either him or the girl at the desk who was so nice. Her name is Fritzy. I've known her for a very long time. Where I think they said it was something about like unity, you know. And look, Kenny doesn't need money, so
Yeah.
I don't. I think some people are. The majority of people are probably doing this for money to make sales. And so hearing a line like that could sound kind of bullshitty. I do understand there is something cool about lining up with your team and you guys are all like fucking ready for battle. With that said, jiu-jitsu is already fucking expensive. And not to go back to my my progressive whiny roots, but like a lot of people, it does cater towards, you know, we think of Brazilians, we think of, you know, these people coming over here, but your average class is kind of like upper middle class white people because we can afford that. You know, like gym fees are really expensive. And then when you throw on, you have to have these amount of gis. I mean, not just this brand of gi, but for like every day of the fucking week. That's a shitload of money for something that we talk about. It's for, you know, mental health and it's for
right.
friendship, unless you can't fucking afford our gi, in which case get the fuck out. Like I don't like that.
Well, let's talk about what makes sense about it and what doesn't, because you're hitting good stuff on either side, and I think there's a line in there somewhere where I believe common sense resides,
Yeah.
where it doesn't make sense, in my opinion, to force a gi policy that is like draconian on people. And there are,
right.
like, listen, if I'll drop the name, everybody's thinking it already. Gracie Baja has some pretty brutal gi policies, to the point that I have a friend who's a competitor up here who's training at a Gracie Baja, who bought. First of all, they aren't allowed to buy any other gis besides Gracie Baja gis, and guess what? Only certain brands make them. I think right now it's Storm. So you can just buy Storm Gracie Baja gis. You can't even just buy another gi and put Gracie Baja on it. It's not a Gracie Baja gi.
Oh, gross. Also, I've talked to people who are like, I've talked to people who have like snuck into like a school I was training at from Gracie Baja, like they're escaping a fucking cult. They all had that like Keenan leaving Lloyd Irvin in the middle of the night, like disheveled look. That was a pretty fucking solid reference. And they would, the way they would talk about it, I remember there was this dad I taught his kids, and he would be like, I was on BJ, you know, whatever one of those fucking like deal sites are.
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah.
Saw 2 gis for $45. Like, can't buy those. And it's like, don't you want people training as much as possible? Can you imagine being a fucking coach and having someone who can only train twice a week because of like laundry, because those are the only fucking gis they can afford?
Exactly. How weird would that be? And that exists right now in certain places. Like I was saying, my buddy, he bought like this $250 beautiful like black on black Storm Gracie Baja gi that he was not allowed to wear because blue belts can't wear black gis.
What?
And he tried to sell it, but nobody was going to buy it. Nobody in his affiliation was going to buy it because they couldn't wear it either. And nobody else wanted a Gracie Baja gi.
Wait,
so he was stuck with like almost $300 worth of gi that he couldn't move.
Is it just the black belts that can wear black gis?
I think so. You gotta, I'm not.
Yuck.
Yeah.
You
go
have
talk
a
to
belt?
one of them.
You have a belt for that. Guys, no one is going to see a blue belt, a black gi and be like, are you the master? Are you professor? Is that you? It's like, no, it's a fucking spazzy blue belt. Yeah, that's
where it does make sense though is like Keenan was saying, like if you walk in wearing a parakeet yellow gi, yeah, we're going to tell you to wear something that isn't like looking like you're coming off of like Mardi Gras, you know?
Yeah, you don't have to be that guy. And again, every gym has that guy where you're like, oh, you're funny spats guy. All right.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. Like, and they're always like a little out of shape, which is really funny. So they have like tie-dye spats and stuff, and like their guts hanging over a little bit. And you're like, all right, fucking funny spat guy. Cool.
Yeah. And
Um,
the what was I going to say? Fuck. The God damn it. I had something in my mind, and then funny spat guy made me think of my funny spat guy that I know. And now that's all I can see in my mind right now is these peacock spats.
well, here, I'll say my thing, and please
Okay.
interrupt me when you think of yours.
Okay.
Which is, look, I come from two of the best gyms in the world, which is Marcelo Garcia, and then I was over at Sean Williams at Henzo's in Los Angeles. And Sean is much more traditional than Marcelo, right? Like you bow, you're supposed to say professor, which I would just like mutter, like when I fucking are just supposed to say namaste in the beginning of yoga. I'm like, you're gonna have to fucking kill me. And both schools, I could wear whatever the fuck I wanted. Where you get to a point where, and look, AOJ, whatever, but a lot of times you notice that the policies are less strict at places that like don't really don't have anything to prove, right? Like Marcelo, nicest guy in the fucking world, whereas I've had black belts who are nobodies be fucking assholes. It's like, oh, because you're kind of insecure, right?
Yeah.
But like Marcelo's like, we were training t-shirts if we wanted to train in t-shirts.
Yeah.
I would wear a lot of the Marcelo gear because it was cool. That's the thing. Design dope gear. Like Marcelo had like a very like at least back when I was training there, like it was very like surf vibe. So like the gear looked cool. Or like right before I left Henzo's, they had this like all black Henzo Gracie Los Angeles rash guard, and I was like, fuck yeah, I want that. Like make dope shit if you're trying to make money that your customers, which I don't even like using that, want to buy, instead of just forcing it on them like it's a fucking cult. Where it's like, look, if the best schools in the
you just reminded me what I was thinking of.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the good part to having that team unity is everybody looks like they're, you know, an army, you know, you get that group camaraderie, that tribe feeling, but it's a slippery slope to go from there into a cult. And I only see that happening where there's that type of control. You know, it's not always necessarily the gi policy that's doing the controlling, but that type of attitude of get in line or get out really leads to that like holier than thou, my professor is better than your professor kind of thing, where it becomes like an insular cult.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get to the point, especially lower belts, you want to get to a point where you can walk into a gym that you've never been to in a t-shirt and shorts and not have to announce what rank you are, not have to like drop a bunch. Like you're just like, I'm just fucking here to train. You know what I mean? Like I love when people actually, this is ego though. I love like, especially after I smash someone, or someone's like, what belt are you? Because I didn't hold it over them. I also didn't go hard. I just like I could play. I didn't have to be like, this is my affiliation, this is my belt. Like, you know, like even the gyms where like this shit where it's like you can't ask a higher belt. Dude, I will straight up be like, Marcelo. Like, and again, the best in the fucking world. Like, I am so lucky that I came up at a place where none of that shit existed. It was like, we're just here to fucking train and be friends. Like, that's it.
Yeah, and it really comes down to, at the end of the day, people are there to learn jiu-jitsu. Everything besides that is extra and, in my opinion, unnecessary.
Yeah, now I will say, off of what you were talking about before, there is only, I would say one if you want to get into heaven, there's only one gi. If you want to get into heaven, if you want to see family members you've lost, pets you've lost, again, we talked about gi policy, cult, blah, blah, blah. But the only true way to see God is unfortunately through Origin, originmain.com, and their gis as well are your straight path to avoid burning in eternal hellfire.
This is something actually that the Pope brought up pretty recently, because it was not understood until very recently. The ancient Sumerian scripts that, you know, they went back to him, because you got to check from time to time to see that your translation was right. Lo and behold, God, Lord God, Elohim has a gi policy, and you cannot. You ever wonder why St. Peter is standing in front of the gate? It's not to say hello. It's not to shake your hand. It's not to check the book to see if your name's in it. It's to see if your gi is right, if it fits, and if it has an origin tag on it.
And then if it is, slaps hands, little fist bump. And people were surprised, because it's easy to make fun of Mormonism, where it's like, oh yeah, it started in America and Joseph Smith and blah, blah, blah. But it is in scripture that the gi policy comes from Maine.
That's right.
Maine, just the Northeast in these here United States. Speaking of United States, not only will you get to heaven, not only will you get to see your relatives that have passed, not only will you avoid eternal damnation and Satan himself, but you're also supporting American-made jobs. I wore my gi last night for the first time. It is fucking the craziest gi ever.
Like, how superior do you feel when you wear that thing? Let me tell you.
I have never given a shit about gis because I'm like a no-gi guy. So I would just take gis that people like gave me for free, and I'm like, cool. This gi, it is so no fucking drawstrings, or did I just not?
Yeah, no, they got that snap lock in the front. It's called a swivel lock.
And it fit perfectly. It was the only time, although I don't have my excuse. I guess I can tie my belt when I'm incredibly tired. Training, it's one less thing for me to pretend I have to tie.
Yeah, do the Brazilian tie to get that extra 30-second break.
Can I tell you, it is just being able to go to the bathroom and not untie a bunch of shit is the underrated advantage of Origin that I've seen. So they're my friend, one of my training partners, they just bought two. And what's cool is they were like, I know it's just a 10% discount you guys get, but like that shit adds up. It's like a legit discount. Because again, the gis you are paying for the quality, you're paying for American jobs, and you're paying, I know we joke about this, but like slave children aren't making your fucking gis.
Yeah, you can feel good about this.
Yeah, and so the discount does help. You can use promo code Rear Naked. That's one word, Rear Naked, and you'll get 10% off. And then there's a ton of other shit. Man, when is it okay for me to ask them for boots and pants? Like
Season
like,
2.
Let's get this relationship like 6 months going, because they have such cool shit on their site that's not even like gi affiliated, that I wanna get all over that.
I want to try their energy drinks in the worst way.
Oh my God, I know. All right, so get into heaven, and it's the good heaven too. Like you can do like.
Wait a sec, is this the one with all the virgins? I'm very confused.
No. That's that's.
This is the one with a whole bunch of experienced people who aren't going to be awkward in bed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They know a thing or two. They know a thing or two to the point where you like want to ask, but you're like, I shouldn't ask. Cool. Yeah. So check out originmain.com, y'all.
All right. Now let's get to the deadliest blue belt in the world, Carlos Condit. Got that rear-facing camera selfie hair check going on.
Gotta look good.
It looks good. Dude, it's so good. I can't believe I haven't talked to you since like I interviewed Drew. I don't know if I told you this. I interviewed Carlos on my political podcast.
Oh, do you really?
Like 8 years ago. I mean, because it was with my ex-wife.
Yeah, 2000. 11 or 12 maybe.
Yeah, and I had no reason. At this point, we were interviewing like Noam Chomsky and shit like that. I was just such a fan of yours, and for some reason, you started following me on Twitter that I had to like crowbar. All I asked them was about fighting, but then I asked you like one question about your dad who was in politics, and I was like, "That checks my box," and then we just talked about fighting the whole time.
Uh-huh.
So what's going on?
I'm not on par with Noam Chomsky.
I'm saying you could beat the fucking shit out of Noam Chomsky, and I'm gonna try to stoke that rivalry. That's my whole goal for this interview. I'm gonna be like, I don't know, man. Chomsky was kind of talking shit about your coffee. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I want to see the preparation lead up fight camp for Chomsky in that one.
Yeah, it's just Carlos working the bag, and then it cuts back to Noam just quietly reading in like his desk chair.
We could do like the MTV Celebrity Deathmatch style, where we're both claymation characters.
Yes, that's very sweet of you. Yeah, man. Well, it's good to see you. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course.
So I got a question to ask, because I kind of know you through Nate, who's your jiu-jitsu coach right now. And he kind of blew up the jiu-jitsu world by giving you a blue belt last year. And everybody's like, okay, Carlos Condit's a blue belt now? Like every blue belt's like, I hope he's not competing. But I looked at your Wikipedia before this, and it puts you at a brown belt for BJJ. So where did that come into play?
So I've never actually been in a belted system or school or lineage. When I started doing jiu-jitsu and grappling, it was more MMA based, and we didn't do belts. And I've been in several different schools, and I train with the Gracie Barra guys out here, and then I train with 10th Planet now, but I've just never, like I said, I've just never been in a belted system for long enough for anybody to give me an actual belt.
Hopefully, because you always hear with different fighters in the Jackson camp, sometimes they're mad, sometimes they're not mad. So I hope I'm not like stepping on any toes. But I always thought Greg was such an interesting guy because, like, I don't really know if anyone even knows his fucking jiu-jitsu lineage.
That's a good point.
What's his jiu-jitsu game sort of like predicated around?
Well, I don't. Yeah, the lineage part I couldn't tell you, but basically the origin story of Jackson's is that some guys from different martial arts backgrounds here in Albuquerque started training about 93. They probably saw the UFC, and I'm not sure exactly how they all connected, but from what I understand, they started training in Greg's basement, and it's guys with wrestling backgrounds, guys with Kempo and karate backgrounds, and they just started training together. There was maybe a handful of these guys, and one of them was actually a flight attendant. It's very kind of Tyler Durden-esque, where he would go all over the country and pick up techniques and watch what different guys were doing, because this was pre-internet, right?
Whoa.
Yeah.
He would pick up what these different gyms were doing and then bring it back, and then they would all train together, and it really built from there.
This sounds like the most successful version in history of bro, let's train UFC.
It worked out well. Whatever the components or formula they had, all of those guys, or a handful of those guys, are now continuing to train guys. They've now broken off, and there's several different gyms, but they all train high-level fighters who are continuing to compete in the UFC. So it's, everybody's been successful.
Was there something about Greg's style that you sort of liked or gravitated towards over some of the more traditional places that maybe you trained, whether it was because it was geared towards MMA or just the fact that like he was kind of like a psycho who taught himself in a garage? Like, did that kind of appeal to you?
I guess that, well, so from a really young age, I wanted to do martial arts. And there's a Taekwondo gym by my house.
Of
And
course
my
there
dad
was.
had done judo and wrestled. And my dad's like, you know what? I don't want, I want you to wrestle because all you got to do is put hands on those guys and they have nothing.
Right.
Which, in some respects, he was absolutely
It's
right.
great. Yeah.
And so I started wrestling pretty young, and then by about 15, I had been watching the UFC for a long time, as it was an underground sport, and I looked in a phone book and found Jackson's ground and stick fighting, and my dad took me down there, and we. I saw them rolling, and I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. But to answer your question, there was no other option. We're talking Albuquerque, New Mexico, 2000, and that's basically my really my only option for any sort of MMA or jiu-jitsu.
Real quick follow up: did you also stick fight with Greg Jackson?
I learned a little bit of stuff, but at that point, it was really geared towards Vale Tudo and MMA as it was emerging as a sport.
Right.
I wonder how annoyed Jackson is that Sticks never made it into the UFC. I bet you that was his fallback plan, was to start his own league with Sticks, just in case this wasn't badass enough.
We have that crazy guy in the gym that everybody's got him.
Yeah,
but he still trains with sticks and all the random implements, like the triple nunchuck thing that looks like a coat hanger until you unfurl it. Yeah.
Yep.
God bless that guy. You just don't want to get in a long conversation with him or you'll never leave the gym.
Right.
You can't leave the gym. Well, that's fascinating, man. What do you think? I kind of wanted to nerd out about your sort of mental game. And I know this is such a douchebaggy question to answer. It's not the easiest thing just to be like, well, I'm strong up here. But that was something that always really, I didn't come from I'm not tough. I failed gym class. I never played any sports. I was a stoner. I was in bands. And so jiu-jitsu and fighting didn't come naturally to me. It saved me, but it didn't come naturally to me. And so when if I go into a new gym and I'm a fucking long time brown belt and they're like, hey, go with this tough blue belt. I'm like, oh, fuck. I don't have that that the toughness. I have to fuck someone up, and then in my head I'm like, oh, I'm good at this thing. Where do you think you got that mental toughness from, or is it kind of a skill that you're constantly working on as well?
So I started playing sports when I was really young, and I started playing soccer, and then and then I was on swim team, and neither of which I was very good at all. Yeah. I wasn't very fast. I wasn't super coordinated. I was aggressive, and I was aggressive to the point that in soccer they made me the goalie so that I would not mug the other kids.
Great.
I hated to lose. So I tried really, really, really hard. And then I started wrestling, and I was good at that until I met guys who were actually skilled. And I spent a long time in elementary and middle school getting my ass handed to me over and over and over. And so I know for a fact that that's where a lot of it came from, is that I sucked enough to get my ass kicked enough to develop that. And maybe there's something inherent in me that I just continue to step up to the plate and take my shit sandwiches. But by the time I got into MMA, by the time I started training kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, I had developed that to a point where it was an asset.
But that's a big deal though, because I think that Because that's the answer I give too. Like, I didn't tap anyone until I got a blue belt. I was at Marcelo's and just got fucking destroyed. And I'm like, that's how I got good, is by getting the shit kicked out of me. But hearing you say that kind of made me be like, right, but most people would still quit. Like, that's not a fun thing. It's not a fun thing to get your ass kicked for so long.
You know what, though? This is what every white belt really needs to hear from this. Because everybody listening already knows that Carlos Condit is well known for being extremely tough, extremely durable, mentally tough in his fights, you know, legendary fights with GSP and Dan Hardy, and, you know, go down the list. And to hear you say that you got tough because you were getting shit kicked, like, a lot of white belts are like, I want to quit because of that.
Right.
So, yeah, like I said, I don't know if that's, I mean, and I don't think it's anything super unique. I think part of the population has that and part of them doesn't.
Right.
I don't know.
What about when it comes to mentally, when it comes to training, what is your difference in the gym? Do you try to be more flowy, technical, relaxed? Because you have a really loose style with your grappling and with your striking. When you so I assume that you do a lot of technical sparring as well. When do you kind of flip that switch, you know, like, can you practice being really light and technical, and then when you need to turn it on, just kind of flip? Or do you try to train as aggressively as you fight?
It's a fine line to walk, right?
I know.
Because it goes both ways. If I'm super aggressive and I am not cognizant about my training partner's health and well-being, then maybe they won't be with mine. And that's, you know, obviously a big deal. You know, this is my livelihood. So there's that. These days, I would like to say that I'm more technical in my sparring. I grew up just beating the dog shit out of my training partners and having the dog shit beat out of me. And sparring with guys who I had no business in the ring with, both ways. And there's a lot of probably irresponsible stuff going on with regards to supervision, and you know, it was a bit wild. But I mean, I didn't know any better. And I think there's a certain point where you have to know if you can take a punch, and you have to know if you're gonna, you know, cower and just lose it. You know, the first time you get a bloody nose or you get popped in the eye. But then after that, once you reach that threshold, we're like, okay, well, I'm not made of glass. I'm not going to shatter. Then it's really about cultivating technique and building, building game plans and tactics at that point. So that's really where I'm kind of, that's my mindset these days.
That makes sense. I remember hearing an old training partner of yours, Cowboy Cerrone, who just fought here recently, talking similar in that he's like, I know that I'm tough. I don't need to prove that I'm tough to people I'm sparring with. I don't need them to reinforce that I'm tough. Now that I know, you know, I can do the thing, it's just about getting, you know, technically little details better. And I don't think that he does much full contact sparring anymore, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sparring is one of those things where it can escalate very quickly, right? It's like, oh, okay, we're tip tapping, and then somebody, even if it's an accident, you know, hits somebody hard, and everybody in here, everybody in the gym, everybody is at this level is a carnivore.
Yeah,
and it can change very quickly, and things can escalate, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Intensity is great, but I guess it's bringing a level of intensity, but trying to stay safe and trying not to injure or concuss your training partner. But that's, I mean, how do you do that?
right.
And sometimes and here at Jackson's, you got a lot of guys that are from all over the world, and everybody spars different. Everybody has a different approach when it comes to this. A lot of guys step in here, and every single time it's a fight, and I don't think that that's a smart thing. But that's how it is. And so not knowing exactly what you're getting yourself into, pulling punches sometimes can get you in trouble, because if I don't hit you and you don't respect my power and you walk through and and blast me, then I'm fucked.
Yeah, that happened to me today in training, where I'm injured and it was like my first time back in a while, and it's a new gym for me. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to be like the cool brown belt and I'm going to go really light. But then people will come to take my head off, and I'm like, oh, if I don't go hard, I'm trying to go light because I'm hurt. But if I'm going too light, then I'm just going to get I'm going to get injured that way. Because I mean, you were right, like it can go either way. It is a fine line. And even psychologically, I've had phases where I've been super giving up positions, really flowy, stuff like that, but you have to be able to turn that shit off too, where I let some kid pass my guard today and was like, I'm flat, and the coach is screaming at me. And I'm like, he doesn't understand that I'm like a cool flowy guy. And suddenly this 19-year-old, just 8-pack has such a tight collar choke that I just possummed until he let go, and then was like, oh, I almost died. But it can go the other way if you're so used to being almost like borderline cocky, relaxed. We always think of ego with these spazzes, but you can use ego to also as an excuse to not try and just relax, and use that as an excuse as well.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So I don't know if we.
And I guess it depends.
Sorry, go ahead.
There's also in the past, so in boxing camps, where the camp is geared around one particular fighter, and then sparring partners are basically, some of them are in a sense a bait dog for that guy.
Right.
They're paid to step in there and give him some looks, but basically take a beating.
Ugh.
And so there's different dynamics and there's different approaches to it. And you see in camps are very diverse in the way that they approach sparring. I'm more in the camp of technical sparring, but with the ability to pick it up at times. But that's just me. What do I know?
Well, I got a couple questions for you. First of all, you're officially retired from MMA now, correct?
No.
No, you're still.
Yes.
You have a contract coming, or is there something you can't talk about?
No. So no. I'm under contract with UFC. So I was supposed to fight in December, and I went, and I was about a month out from my fight, and I was going and getting all my
the medicals?
All my stuff done. In my eye exam, I came up with a detached retina.
Oh.
And so about 2 months ago, I had to get retina surgery, and I am still recovering from that. And so that's where I stand. And I don't have anything on the books, but I'm not retired.
Okay, so my follow-up then, I cannot ask you to shit on the UFC, so I will delicately, we're starting to hear a lot of fighters speak up more, whether it comes to unionizing or treatment. And I think a lot of people don't know that, the guys at the top, I mean, you can become a fucking billionaire megastar, but a lot of these guys on the undercard, I mean, you can almost break even. Is there something you would like to see the UFC focus more on when it comes to the betterment and the longevity of the fighters?
So as far as the longevity of the fighters, I do think that the UFC has taken the reins and done some pretty good stuff.
Sure.
With regards to the UFC PI, I know that they take care of guys that are injured and have different issues, and I don't think that they're leaving anybody on their roster who's currently on their roster, as far as I know, high and dry when it comes to their
health.
When it comes to their health, but you know, we can be off the UFC roster in the blink of an eye. You know, something happens, you have a bad run, and all of a sudden, bam, now I've sacrificed possibly my health and maybe some years off my life, and now I have to go back into the real world and maybe work a 9 to 5, or I got to figure out what I'm doing for a living. So there's basically, to answer your question, I absolutely feel like a fighters union is something that we need and have needed for a long time. I just think that having some collective power is never a bad thing to balance out the power that the UFC has. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
No. Do you think that the reason it hasn't picked up is just because there's a scarcity mindset with a lot of these fighters who are so happy to be in the UFC, even if they're making, $5,000 and most of that's going to their camp, that they don't want to rock the boat? I mean, this seems to be the biggest problem with organizing, especially artists and stuff in general, where they're just like, hey man, I'm so fucking happy to be here and not working down at the docks anymore, that I don't want to ruffle any feathers, and if I just play by the rules, I could end up being Conor McGregor, and then I'm fine.
I think that's very accurate, and by the time if you do make it, that you would have some pull in some sort of fighter organization, they're already treating you pretty well, so you don't have a whole lot of gripes.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they get you.
I remember a few years ago, it was a while ago now, I think that Randy Couture made a run at it and hit a brick wall. I don't know if there's anybody that's really given an honest effort since then. Do you think that kind of detoured people from trying?
I don't. I know that there's been some other efforts, and I think that
Leslie Smith's been like a fucking workhorse for it.
Yeah, there's been a couple of other guys, and I've been contacted. It's just it's hard to organize. It's hard to organize it. There's not really a base because people come from not only so many different walks of life, but different countries, different economic situations, that there's not really in other sports, I mean, there's been a lot of things established in the past, and they're all coming from certain feeder systems. But it's just not like that in the UFC. It's becoming more uniformed and a little bit more homogenous as far as the way that guys get to the UFC, but still, it's a little bit it's kind of the Wild West.
Yeah. I know when people ask me about stand-up, especially if they have families or a decent job, and they're like, I'm always like, follow your dreams. But if someone's like, hey, should I start stand-up? I'm like, no, don't do it. It's brought me a lot of joy. It's brought me a lot of pain. I'm sure you feel the same way with fighting. Is there part of you that kind of, feels the elder statement, to warn kids and ward them off? Or has it brought you enough joy that you're like, fuck yes, but you have to dedicate pretty much everything to be successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have kids, and my 9-year-old says he wants to be a fighter, and so
no.
Yeah, and so I have to think about that really in depth. What what is it that I would want for other people who want to be MMA fighters? And I'm not any authority on anything. And I've made tons of mistakes, and I'm like, I have side gigs going on, but I'm also towards the end of my career. But, you know, I didn't really have a fallback plan. When I was like 17, 18 years old, I'm like, I'm going to be a UFC fighter. And
Dude, same. Yeah,
it,
totally.
I don't need school, and like, you know, incredibly misguided. Luckily, it's worked out to some extent at this point that, hey, things, you know, I hit the wave just right where I was able to have a career in this and have so far made a living. But I would recommend that people have various options, and, you know, and that doesn't just go for an athletic endeavor, but, you know, if I want a particular job, then, and that job all of a sudden is, you know, is outsourced to a different country or to a robot or something, and now my skill set is obsolete, I need to have something to fall back on. So, you know, having some depth of skills is an important thing.
Andrew Yang 2020.
You know,
He'll stop the robots.
Yeah, see, that's the thing, is we're not gonna stop the robots.
No.
We had Karen Bryant on the last episode, and she was kind of riffing on the ability of fighters to move into like analyst positions and commentator positions and find these other avenues that can use the skills that they've already acquired in a different field outside of the cage. So have you ever looked into any of that yourself, or do you know people that have, you know, would you suggest that, I guess is what I'm saying? Is that just like a short-term thing for a few people, or is that something that most fighters should be looking towards?
I think if that's you, then absolutely pursue it. And I have done some stuff. I did at the ESPN. This was years ago, and I was actually there to do a breakdown of the Jones Gustafson 1. And so I spent a couple of days as there, and this was before they really had any sort of, most everybody there didn't even have, MMA wasn't even on their radar. It was kind of scoffed at. But that being said, I did okay, but I probably needed more training before I went on live TV, and in some of my segments, I think I shit the bed. So I wasn't invited back. And like I said, I guess to answer your question, if that's you and that's what you want to do, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I don't really want to travel a whole lot, right? I have, you know, my priorities being around my kids and being a present in my family's life. So travel isn't really something that's real high on my priority. So I had to figure out other things to do.
So I guess to turn that back to you personally, what are your goals after you are, like, I thought that you were retired for some reason, but since you're not, are you still looking towards what you're going to do after this? And do you have like plans and goals and a timeline, I guess, for what you're looking at?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things I'm doing right now, and it's probably been 3.5 years, is I've been building a coffee company. For a long time, I wanted to get into coffee, and I just met some folks, and things worked out. And we are now about to open our first location. We've been doing wholesale and distribution for a while and slowly building.
We actually have an exclusive sponsor deal with Chomsky's Coffee. So if you could not promote your coffee shop, that would help a lot.
Now we're gonna have to fight.
The fight's on.
That's fucking awesome. So you're opening a new location, you said?
Yeah, well, we're opening a location. We've been doing events and wholesale and that sort of thing up to this point. So working on that, and then coaching and doing seminars. I really enjoy that aspect of staying in the sport in a different capacity than fighting.
Dude, I got really excited. I don't know if you're teaching, because I'm in town next weekend at Nate's school teaching yeah, I don't know if you're teaching any striking classes, but I got super excited when I saw that you started doing that again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's something I dig. I love the community over at Darkhaven, which is the 10th Planet Albuquerque gym. And I teach. It's a little small studio, but we have a great group of people, and I dig training down there and teaching. My little bit of funky striking stuff.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. What do you? So when you come back, has there been part of you that? I go through this with politics a lot, where I know that if I kind of flipped the script and was the extreme, either extreme, if I was, the lefty who now hates the left, or if I, went extreme to either side, I would make a ton of money. And that temptation's there sometimes. It's there when things aren't going well. Do you get that with kind of shit talking, or seeing Colby and seeing Connor and seeing a lot of those guys be so successful off of it? And we talked to Karen about this as well, because a lot of people try to shit talk and it's very inauthentic and very painful to watch. But is there a part of you that's kind of like, man, maybe if I did that more, I could get bigger fights? Or are you just trying to fucking fight?
I mean, I'm 35 at this point, man, and I'm not trying to be anybody else than who I am, and that's not really me. If I had legitimate beef with somebody, I maybe would have words, but I don't know. That's not me, and that's never been me, and I think that it would come off as inauthentic.
Right.
And at this point, I haven't won a fight in a long time, so I should probably focus on that rather than trying to talk myself up. But hey, you know what? And so the guys that you mentioned, Connor and Colby, okay, yeah, they're running their mouths, but they're also winning fights, right? It's not just running their mouths. So there's also there's substance to that as far as being a prize fighter.
Sure. Do you think that there's almost too much emphasis on it? Or it's what the people like? If the people like it, you can't really turn the train around.
We're in the entertainment business, and it makes sense to, it's not just the fight. It's obviously the lead up. It's obviously promoting two personalities, and there's been a lot of great fights, but the story behind the matchup wasn't what some of these other ones are, and they don't get the eyes, they don't get the attention, they don't get the excitement, and that's just love it or hate it. It's how it is.
Bro, once a year, I will watch the last 5 minutes of your countdown with GSP and Diaz. I think you were fighting Diaz, but they brought GSP in professional wrestling style at the very end of countdown to be like, I'm coming for who's next. And they played that fucking Perfect Circle song. Anytime I'm like, I'm going to fuck someone up, I will watch the end of that on YouTube. It's still my favorite countdown moment of all time.
Yeah, there was a story there, right? And I think I was probably the least interesting part of that story as far as the outside of the cage dynamic, right? It was more so Nick and GSP being the greatest, and Nick being this guy, and then I'm the wild card. And at that time, I was on a tear, and I was winning a lot of fights and having a lot of success in a big way. So that's why it was interesting. But I'm also just a fairly normal dude who most people are like,
I can take that away from you right now, because I'm a huge fanboy, and I'm just super happy to talk to you today. Whether you think you're interesting or not, you're pretty fucking interesting.
This was the first interview that Drew was like, I'm a little nervous. And I was like, I know you, which is the only reason I'm not. But then I forgot you were really good looking. So when the camera clicked on, I was like, fuck, I'm nervous too.
I got a question for you, actually. Speaking of your own career, so you're saying you're 35 now. You've, as far as I see it, you've been there, done that for just about everything that you can do in the UFC at this point. What is it that you have set for yourself that drives you forward in this sport still? Like, is there a specific goal? Is there just a mentality, or is there like you want to finish with a win, or what's going forward through your head while you're going forward?
I really love the process. I love training. I love sparring. I get to work out and come and play karate for a living. That's my job, right? That's like, if I went back in time, or I was able to see myself as an adult from being a child, I'd be like, holy shit, like this, I'm living my dream. So
Right.
I still dig it. I really do. And as far as the competitive aspect, I love to fight. I love the intensity. I love to get in there and, hit and hit somebody and be hit. And I love that part.
I have one more psychological question coming into your next fight, because, you made a joke about how you're coming off of some losses. What is the healthy mental approach when you're building up to this fight, right? Because you want to go over the mistakes you've made and make improvements. But if you go too far in the direction of focusing on the losses and not focusing on what you're really good at, that could kind of backfire. So what is that kind of like psychological balance?
Well, I'll let you know when I find it. But I would say that just remembering who I am as a fighter, athletes, remembering, you don't lose anything necessarily. I think that you can get into a mental slump and you're like questioning, oh, well, do I still have it, and this and that. And I think that is, I don't think that it's obviously it doesn't, it's not helpful. But knowing that, you're not going to lose something overnight, and you got to get back in the groove. Basically, believe in yourself. You believed in yourself at one point, and in the past, there's been a lot of times where I didn't necessarily believe in myself, and maybe surprised myself with my ability. So I've risen to the occasion so many times that I know that I can do it again.
That's fucking great. Drew, you got anything else?
No,
if not, I'm
gonna do it.
I'm bringing it back. All right. So I don't know how this happened, but there was a phase in this, although I didn't ask Eddie Bravo because he started ranting about chemtrails. I don't know how this happened, man, but I started asking fighters their relationship advice. And you have an adorable family. So if you could give one piece of relationship advice to all of these young men and women fighters who are dummies in everything but fighting, what would your go-to relationship advice be?
That's my response.
That was my favorite reaction. Just
Well, having just gone through a divorce and
baby.
Being on the other side, I mean, I would say the things that you avoid talking about in order to avoid a fight, they need to be discussed, even if it's uncomfortable.
See, such good advice.
Because it's gonna fester, and it's ultimately going to go to shit anyway if you don't address things as they come.
That is fucking solid advice. Everyone secretly fucking loves this segment, Drew, by the way. I've not had one complaint about it. That is solid advice. Well, look, man, I really hope that we get to fucking hang out next weekend. We've never met. I feel like I've just known you on the internet for forever. But yeah, I'll stop by whatever you're doing and say hey.
Yeah, man, I'll be around. I'm free next weekend, so let's look forward to meeting you in person, dude.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well, thank you again for doing this.
Take care,
all right, guys.
See you, dude.
Later.
I bet you guys were like, Well, Jamie got all of his Carlos Condit's hot stuff done before the interview so that he wouldn't say anything to his face, and you would be wrong because I did. I 100% did. And I also want to say, guys, I am going to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Let me give the fucking details. Oh, wait, is the seminar going to be passed? No. Okay, great. This week, I am doing a seminar at Dark Haven Studios with Nate. Maybe Carlos Condit will be there. It is Saturday, February 1st from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's a no-gi seminar. Although I have a very strict policy of what rash guards you can wear. So that is going to be in New Mexico. Now, there is a chance that I'm going to hang out with Carlos Condit. And by the way, fucking Nate's hot too. Yeah, he's like a fucking actor.
He doesn't wear shirts because he doesn't have to. It actually makes him uglier to wear shirts because he's so pretty.
You are going to see, I'm going to be the fat kid in the t-shirt going in the pool. Every picture, it's going to be like Carlos and Nate with no shirts and me in like a baggy, like no fear shirt.
Full moo-moo down to the ankles.
Oh, that Homer Simpson line. I don't want to look ridiculous. I'll take the moo-moo. It's going to be like, the no fear, like my baggy Umbro shorts or whatever. And so, however, guys, I would be very terrified to hang out with Nate, to hang out with Carlos, if I didn't have, and by the way, this is 100% legitimate. This is the only gear I'm bringing. My SUPERARE shirts, my fucking Jiu-jitsu versus everybody shirt, my Muhammad Ali shirt. I have I don't think I've showed this one on the show, but the Biggie silhouette with Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I saw that on their site. Sick.
Dude, they have the absolute coolest, fucking jiu-jitsu gear. The shirts are so nice that like I can wear them out to dinner. Like I don't just wear them with my scumbag jiu-jitsu friends. Like I've worn them on dates. They've been girlfriends' favorite shirts. And I will wear them when I'm cruising the town looking for a bar fight with Nate Harris and Carlos Condit this weekend, which I'm very excited. We also don't mention this. They also have like a ton of professional fighting gear. Like boxing gloves and mouth guards. You can get all that shit from there as well.
So I got a question. Are you you're going to be wearing these shirts to try to pick up Carlos Condit?
To try to pick up Carlos Condit and Carlos Condit esque. Yeah. Oh no, you would think I would be trying to, just to be very clear, I'm not going out with Nate and Carlos Condit to pick up women.
Right.
I'm hanging out with Nate and Carlos Condit to make Carlos Condit fall in love with me. Do you like how I didn't jump to sex and I jumped to fall in love with me and help raise his child, help raise his child?
Well, look, you're both single as far as I know right now, so this is your chance. SUPERARE is the key.
We're both divorced. So if you want to look like hot divorcee fighters, and you need 15% off because you're paying for child support, you can go to superareshop.com. You get 15% off. Or if you're in New York and Los Angeles, I highly recommend checking out the shops because they're every fight fans fucking dream. Like you walk in there and it's like, yes, you'll feel like you got into heaven with Jocko's Gis. And then use promo code Rear Naked and you will get 15% off, which is pretty legit.
Can we talk about how we're getting paid to make people look and be more awesome? That's kind of the best job in the world.
It's amazing. And Drew and I have talked about this, but we wanted these two companies to be our first two sponsors for a reason, because we just support. Like I was a customer before. Like that's what I want. I don't want to like pretend to like some gi company I don't give a shit about.
Well, man, I feel like we've got most of the talking done in the front portion of this podcast, riffing and bitching about gi policies. So I don't know if we need to put another. And you even got your fucking relationship question at the end there.
I sure did. Sure did.
You were so happy to sneak that in, like 2 episodes in a row. We missed it.
I had to. It's like you don't go for your favorite move like 2 classes and they're like, oh, I guess he's done with that. And then bam. So that was great. I would say too, remember guys, this we take Instagram questions every week, but also for building community. If you have responses to anything from the interviews, or you have a take that we didn't get to with the gi policy, or you have a story, you know, if you have a story about being fucking turned away or anything like that from a gym,
or how awesome it is in your cult.
Yes, we will read all of those, or we'll read the good ones at least, on the show. And then next week, Tom DeBlas, baby.
Yeah.
Fucking Jersey. I'm so excited for that. It is going to be the most Jersey interview. I'm going to turn into a different person, by the way.
I'm going to start tanning already.
You start tanning. There will be no relationship questions. It'll only be like questions about street fighting and like
and pasta.
Yeah. Tom, first question. What you do if someone's talking shit? I'm very excited for that. So thank you again to Carlos Condit. Follow him. I'm so excited that he's still fighting. And yeah, what a good dude. That was a blast. All
right, guys. So make sure you subscribe. You 5-star rate us on iTunes.
Right.
Check out the Jamie Kilstein on Instagram. Check out Because Jitsu on Instagram. Check out Reverse Kimura on Instagram. I'm gonna be dropping a series here real soon. We will keep you in the loop. And thanks so much for listening to the podcast.
Cool. See you guys next week. Bye.